I've got to go find the very first thing that I'm super excited about for this trip. It's something that makes this trip really unique and special, and one of the main reasons why I wanted to come here. But first, I gotta go find it. So that place you just saw me visit is called Perfect Kiva, and that's the first site that I'm coming to along this route. Kiva is a term used to describe a ritual room that was used by Pueblo Indian men. So that was like a special place for rituals. Perfect, that's not a term I'm familiar with. Today was just, checking out that Kiva was really, really cool. I don't think I've ever been to anything like that before, and I was excited to come on this trip and just score this permit specifically for that. And the jailhouse was pretty cool too, with the paintings on top. So I don't know how much archaeology I'll see tomorrow. I think I've heard that it's going to be super beautiful, but a little bit about what I saw today. This area was inhabited by the Pueblo people in about 1000 AD. They lived here with a number of different communities between about 1050 AD to 1270, and then they kind of moved further south, and I think a lot of them integrated with the Hopi people. Or became the Hopi. I'm not really sure about that. They used to do a lot of trading with, like, if you've heard of Mesa Verde National Park, so they would do trading with those people, but this was a good position for them because there's a lot of defensible space and it's pretty well isolated. And so if you're a community that's trying to protect itself, this is a really good place to have working for you in that regard. I imagine it did also make trading pretty tough, but when I think about like ancient communities living in places like this, moving through these landscapes, or how scary it can be, there's a lot of like stuff circulating about fear all the time, and just remembering that there were these ancient cultures that called these places home in a better developed state than we have them in now, but also like I'm carrying a lot of stuff with me in my tent, so I have far more technology with me than they could have even imagined, and yet there's this idea that we should be like really afraid of it. It's like, no, if you spend enough time outside, if you learn about it, you start to feel more comfortable with it and it becomes less scary. That's just how it works. Good morning. got a good night's rest last night, and I'm out on the trail for my day excursion today. I did leave camp set up where it was, and I am headed down canyon towards the confluence of Grand Gulch and Cane Gulch. And then I will be headed up Cane Gulch just a little ways, looking for Green Mask Spring, where I'll collect more water, and Sheik's Canyon, which I've heard is a spectacular sight. So I look forward to checking that out. Canyon, come around, and this is Cane Gulch. I have about a mile maybe until Green Mask Spring, so I'm going to hike for about 25 minutes and then check and see where I'm at. Also, how cool was that green mask? I've never seen a pictograph like that before. Really cool. It'll be 7 o'clock in a few minutes here, and I'm already all cozy in my tent. When I rolled back into camp, I got dinner started right away. That's a happy sight. Back to camp. Woohoo! I had a Next Mile Meals. I think it used to be called the Italian meatball. I don't know what it's called now, but it was delicious, and I had some mashed potatoes as well. Made sure I drank plenty of water, and just immediately got changed into my camp clothes. So just kind of wiped down and got clean, changed into my camp clothes. But also something that I really like to do is I have this homemade kind of remedy thing, which is coconut oil combined with tea tree and lavender essential oils, and I find it to be very soothing and very calming. So I rub that on my skin anywhere it's feeling dry. I like to rub it on my chest so that it smells nice and relaxing. And then my feet, because they've been exposed to a lot of sand despite the fact that I'm wearing gaiters, they feel particularly dry, so I put a nice coating of that on my feet before I put my nighttime socks on. And so when I wake up in the morning, they should be feeling nice and moisturized. And it just helps me relax. It just feels really nice. And those essential oils also have natural antimicrobial properties, so it's probably not a bad thing either. I know that some people will be concerned about the scent of that and wildlife. I've never encountered an issue, but it has occurred to me that there could be some risk associated with that. So I don't know. Anyway, I'm going to go to bed now. I don't really expect I'm going to film tomorrow, but thank you for coming along. If anything out of the ordinary incredible happens tomorrow, then I will pull out the camera. Otherwise, I'm going to end this right here and stay tuned for the trip debrief to follow. Thanks for following along. Thank you so much for watching the video of my backpacking trip to Cedar Mesa, down Bullet Canyon to Cane Gulch. It was a 2-night trip. It was so much fun. I saw a lot of really interesting things that I haven't seen on a backpacking trip before, and so it made the experience very unique. I also really enjoyed the hike itself, like the hike through the slick rock. That was very enjoyable for me. There was sand and some bushwhacking, which isn't always my most favorite kind of things, especially the sand, but I would still do it again. I definitely really enjoyed it. And I would be excited to have the opportunity to take a group out there in the future. So maybe that's something to come. In the meantime, I wanted to share with you my trip debrief, just kind of the information that I used for planning on this trip, and any specific notes to this trip that might be useful for you if this is something that you are considering. So first and foremost, permit is required for an overnight stay in this area. There is a quota of 20 persons per trailhead, and they are issued up to 90 days in advance for reservation, and that goes up until 5 days in advance of your start date. If you make an online reservation, the cost for this permit is $21. Otherwise, 8 of the 20 permits are available for walk-up only, and the purchase price for those is $15. This trip can be accomplished as a day hike, as it's not too strenuous and the mileage is low enough, and it is still pretty popular for that. So they don't require permits, but they do require what they're calling passes. And there is no quota for day hikes, but they just want you to fill out for a pass at the ranger station. Typically, this trip is done as a one-way from Bullet Canyon to Cane Gulch, and I encountered a number of groups that were choosing to do it like that, either one way or the other, and it was taking them 3 to 4 nights depending on their group, and then I also imagine whether or not they were intending to explore Sheik's Canyon or not. The reason that I did it as an out and back from Bullet Canyon trailhead is simply because I was by myself and needed to return to the trailhead from whence I started. So that's why I did it like that. The map that I would recommend for this trip would be the National Geographic Trails Illustrated, number 706, Cedar Mesa. In this specific wilderness area, they don't do a lot of trail maintenance, so there are distinguishable trails, but there is also some route finding required. There are some cairns, but not all throughout, and there's plenty of trail braiding. Typically, in a canyon situation like this, if you're just headed in the right direction through the canyon, you're going to find and pick up little trails throughout, and they'll meet up with one another and you'll generally head in the right direction. There is no signage. There are a number of really interesting archaeological features that you'll definitely want to check out if you choose to do this hike. It's one of the highlights of it, and there is no signage to point you towards that. So having a map and having maybe a GPS tracking device to help assist you in finding your location relative to where those things may be will be really helpful. Also, just doing online research ahead of time and kind of getting an idea of what things look like so you know what you're looking for could be really helpful as well. And then doing your map work, doing your prep work is going to really help you with that. And just doing that research ahead of time to not only know what you're looking for, but to know what it is, because you're also not going to see placards explaining, what something that you're looking at is or when it was created. And so having that background information already in your mind could be really helpful and just kind of round out the experience as well. I use the newest version of AllTrails as of today to route my trip, to navigate and record what I did. Unfortunately, I did find that AllTrails stopped recording 5 different times on its own. And the first time I did it, and even the second time I did it, I gave it the benefit of the doubt and figured that maybe I had done something wrong to make it stop recording. But the newest edition requires that you actually press and hold on the pause until the circle completes in order for it to stop recording. And 5 times for me to have done that on accident is just improbable. So that was a little bit frustrating for me because sometimes it took a little while for the map to reload. And so on this trip, it was specifically important for me to know where I was relative to certain features, not only to see these archaeological sites, but also so that I could get water, because water is a big topic that I want to talk about for this hike. There is water available seasonally, but you need to do research ahead of time, talk to the rangers. Also, like, Facebook groups can be a really good resource if anybody has beta from recent trips, because you're going to be pulling water from springs and potholes. So you'll want to have a filter with you, and you'll want to have a pretty decent carrying capacity. I personally hiked in with 5 liters of water, and then on the second day I collected another 5 liters of water. It was hot, it's an arid desert, you do not want to end up dehydrated because it is a reverse hike. You are going down to start and you'll be climbing back up out to end. So you want to make sure that you have adequate water, you're taking care of your bodily hydration. Yeah, the water sources are going to change, where the pools are going to change. The accessibility of the springs may change. So just make sure you check on recent information about that before you head in. Like I mentioned before, there is a lot of sand in this hike. Gaiters are an excellent piece of gear to have with you. Just the small, thin fabric gaiters will be sufficient for that. And then another thing to consider would be trekking poles could be useful. The sun just got crazy. Do you mind? If you choose to use trekking poles on the sandstone portion of the hike, you will want to have the rubber cap, because otherwise they're essentially useless and will just scratch the sandstone as they slip out from under you. So if you have that rubber cap that you can put on your trekking poles, this is the time to use it. And it really won't hurt to have them on there securely while you're traveling through the sand as well. Well, I definitely wouldn't rate this as a strenuous hike. There are some more challenging moves that some people may have challenges with, and that is because they are actually more of like a class 3 move, where you may need to incorporate your hands into climbing over boulders, climbing on to the slick rock up to the next level, and things like that. Especially if you're looking to visit some of the archaeological sites, there are not trails up the sandstone. Nobody has gone in and cut in stairs. You really need to be able to climb up it. Not anything to be hugely intimidated about, but something to be aware of. There's not a significant amount of exposure during most of those moves. but it is something that somebody with a very substantial fear of heights might be afraid of. I did use a different backpack than I usually use on this hike. I used my Sierra Designs Flux Capacitor. I am an ambassador for Sierra Designs, and that backpack was gifted to me as part of my contract. It is a 60 to 70 liter backpack, and it was definitely overkill in terms of volume for this specific trip. It was just a 2-night trip in pretty warm conditions. So it's definitely too large for my needs, but it carried well, and it is a very quality backpack, and I just wanted to try it for the second time. I've only carried it one other time prior, and that was during like a Polk winter trip. So I was using it to tow a sled, and it felt good then. I thought, now that it's a little warmer, I have a different setup, I want to try it out again before I carry it out fully loaded potentially in the future. My smaller pack would have also been totally sufficient for this trip, but I just wanted to try out the bigger one. The reason that I got that one from Sierra Designs, the reason that I chose that item is because I don't have an expedition size backpack, and now I do with that one. So when I go on much longer treks that would require more gear, I'll be equipped to handle that, and I'm excited to do that in the future with that backpack because it was awesome. But for shorter trips like this, I'll continue to carry my other backpack. And that was just a little note on a personal level for my regular viewers that might be curious about why I was using a different backpack on this trip. That's pretty much all I have to say about it at this time. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I'll see you again on the next adventure. Take care. Bye-bye.